so the colors we're gonna start with is you're gonna need your little cup of blue. And we're gonna use the big brush that I gave you. That one, we're gonna take like probably about half of the blue, or a quarter of the blue in one spot on your palette, and a quarter of the blue on another spot on your palette. And then for the black, we're going to dip just a tiny bit. So like just the tip of your brush. And we're gonna pick one of our piles of blue and we're gonna mix it into there. That way we can make it a little bit darker. So not entirely black, but a darker blue. And just make sure you get that nice and mixed up. If it doesn't fit on your palette, because I know I wasn't able to get big enough palettes, I recommend using just a paper plate, or if you have a piece of foil, you can mix it on that. All right. So once we got that very dark blue, you're just going to start at the very top and just go to the very edge. So all the way to the edge, we're just going to do a stripe right on that top edge. Paint it in, make it nice and solid. All right, and then going back to this, that pure blue that you put there, gonna dip our big brush in some of that. And you don't have to rinse your brush in between these because it'll help it blend in between those two colors. So we're gonna go right below that dark blue, and we're gonna put that pure blue on there. We're gonna kind of brush it up into that dark blue. That way it kind of melts together. That way you can't really see a defined line. It just kind of blends into it. So you're gonna want like about a third of your thing is going to be blue. And then once that's good, I'll let you guys get caught up a little bit. If anyone needs me to pause at any time, just let me know and I can give you more time to work on yours. All right, let's see. So after you get your blue on there, we're gonna go ahead and rinse our brush a bit. That way when we go on to the next color, it doesn't leave streaks of blue. So go ahead and rinse your brush. And if your water gets too dark at any point, just go ahead, dump it out and fill with new water. Otherwise it'll mix with the colors you're trying to paint on. And just before you go on to the next color, after you rinse your brush, I recommend wiping it on a paper towel or a napkin. Just that way there's not too much water in your brush. Otherwise it'll make it harder for the paint to dry. We don't want it to take too long. Alrighty. So the next color I'm gonna go on to is gonna be the red. So we're gonna go to the bottom of our canvas. Oops, let me get that centered. And we're gonna leave probably about an inch of white at the bottom. And we're gonna paint on a red line. We're gonna use that side to side motion. And just kind of paint upward. And you can take, since this is just pure red, you can take your paint straight out of the little cup. You don't need to put it on your palette if you don't have space. We're gonna brush up, make sure it's fully covered. Brush up a little bit more. And then take a little bit of red on your big brush. You're just gonna smear that on your palette. And then we're gonna rinse our brush. That way we go get some yellow to mix with it. It doesn't make the yellow all messy. And once again, don't forget to dry your brush. And then move that out of the way real quick. So we're gonna take some yellow, get a good little glob on there. I'm gonna mix it with our red to make orange. And if it still looks too red, then you just add a little bit more yellow. Oop, I got a little blue in mine, so it's kind of muddy. So once you got your orange on your brush, we're gonna go right above that red. We're gonna do the same thing, kind of paint it on there, and then brush it down over that red so that it kind of mixes with it. So we're gonna want maybe an inch and a half of that white space gonna be left over, because that's where we're gonna put our yellow and a little bit of white so that it blends together. See, so we're gonna go ahead and after you're done painting on that orange, go ahead and rinse your brush again. And then we're gonna paint on some yellow. Make sure to get your brush nice and dry. Then we can go straight into the yellow. A good little glob on there. We're gonna do the same thing, side to side, right above that orange. And first go up almost to the blue, and then go back down and brush it over that orange. That way it mixes a little bit. Just kind of go back and forth and blend that together. That way it's not a hard line. All right. So for the part in the middle here, that's gonna need to dry a bit. We're gonna need that yellow to dry. Otherwise, when we put the white and the next to the blue and the yellow, it's gonna mix and it's gonna turn green, and we don't want that. So we're gonna let it dry for a little bit. But while we do that, while we let that dry, we're gonna work on that bottom part. So that black paint. So go ahead and rinse your brush. Real good. Gotta get all that water out. That way we don't have watery paint. Okie dokie. Yeah, we go to that bottom part. And we're gonna take our black paint. We're just gonna paint a solid line. Fill in the rest of that white that's at the bottom. If you need to go over the red a little bit, that's okay. And just fill that in, make sure it's nice and filled in. A little more if you need to, and just make sure it's all covered. Alright, so make sure you get it all the way to that edge. And we're gonna let it dry a little bit. Let's see, the yellow isn't quite dry yet, so while we let that dry, we're gonna do those little bits of grass at the bottom. And to do the grass on your big brush, instead of grabbing it by the metal or the handle, you're gonna grab it by the middle of the bristle. So it's okay if your hands get a little covered in paint for this part, but we're gonna grab it there. That way the bristles kind of splay out like little blades of grass, and that's gonna help us create the grass without, having to paint every individual blade. No one wants to do that, right? All right, so I'm gonna get a little closer here, that way you guys can see. Grab it by the middle. Try to hold it. We're just gonna kind of go at an angle, like lay it flat, and just paint those little tufts of grass, like a little bush. Then we're gonna go along the edge and just kind of, not really brushing it too much, but like dabbing it, just kind of gently pressing it on. And it's gonna make it look like little tiny blades of grass without actually having to paint all of them. And then you can go up a little higher to make it look like a little shrub out in the desert. Give it some variation. Do some little tiny blades. Yellow's still drying. So if your yellow is almost dry, for the next step, I'm gonna open the little white cup of paint. And first we're gonna clean all this black paint off our brush. You don't want any of that in there since we're gonna be blending a little bit of white and a little bit of blue, so we don't want it to get all muddy. So we're gonna have to rinse our brush really well, dump out your cup of water and get new water if you need to. We don't want those other colors making their way into our paint. Nice. Okay. And then make sure to squeeze all the water out. All right. So once we got our brush clean and mostly dry, I'm gonna get some of the white paint. I'm gonna go anywhere on our palette that's clean and wipe off that white paint on there. And then we're gonna get a teeny tiny bit of blue on our brush. We're gonna mix it into that white. Mix it really good. So you want a very light blue. If you need to, go ahead and add more white if you need to. And mix it really well. We're gonna go ever so slightly on top of that blue we already have there. I'm gonna paint that in there. We're gonna almost touch the yellow, but not quite, because we don't want it to turn green. And then if you need to, that way it's not such a harsh line again, go ahead and grab more of that blue that's not mixed with anything, just that pure blue. Without cleaning your brush off, just get some more blue and brush it right above it. That way it's wet again, that way it blends better. And then go get more of that light blue you just made. Kind of brush it over, blend it in. That way it's not such a drastic change in color right away. All right, so we're gonna let all the sunset colors we did on there dry a bit, and then we can add in our cactuses. And you can put your large brush to the side for now, set it in your cup of water, that way the paint doesn't dry on it. And we shouldn't be using that for the rest of this. We'll just be using the small brush. I'm gonna use that little brush. And just pure black paint. And the way I started it, we're gonna do just a stick down, not quite the middle, just a little bit off to the right of your thing. And we're gonna put it, the top of it is gonna be right about where the blue starts. You're gonna take a good amount of the black on your little brush. We're gonna go right where the blue starts, not quite in the center. We're just gonna paint a straight line all the way into the grass. So that's gonna be our big tall cactus. And we don't want it to be like square at the top, so what we're gonna do, get this a little bit closer. We're gonna just kind of go at it at an angle, kind of make it round at the top. That way it doesn't look too square. And then I'm gonna turn my brush kind of sideways. And I'm just gonna go along the edge of this and kind of wave it out a little. That way it doesn't look like too straight of a line. We want it to look like a real cactus. Real cactuses have all those lumps on them and all the ridges. So we're just gonna kind of make it a little more wiggly, a little more natural. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side of it. Make it a little bit wiggly. I'm just gonna make sure it's all filled in. And then for the arms of the cactus, they don't have to be perfect. All cactuses look different. All these paintings are gonna look a little bit different, and that's okay. So we're gonna, arms don't have to be in the same place, but the way I'm gonna do mine, do one kind of longer arm, and I'm using the, instead of painting like this, I'm gonna turn my brush a little bit. That way I'm not using the wide end, and I'm just gonna kind of sketch out my cactus arm. Kind of bring it down, and then curve it inward. Use that line and kind of make it a little bit thicker. Bring it towards my cactus. Bring it down. And then to make it seem more like a cactus silhouette, we're gonna say there's another arm right next to it. But since it's a shadow, we really can't see the separation of it, so we're just gonna paint it right overlapping it. And then for our other arm, we have that one a little bit taller than the arm we have on the left side. So on the right side, we're gonna do it a little bit taller. Same thing, just kind of use that corner of your brush And go down. This one comes down to right about here. We're gonna go up a little higher. So where it connects to the cactus is gonna be a little higher than on the other arm. And we're just gonna go in there, make it a little bit thicker. And the edges, you can kind of just dab your brush. That way it's not a straight, smooth line. Put some little bumps. Make sure it's nice and filled in. All right, so once we got our big cactus, then we can move on to the cactus that's going to be over here, and it's going to be in the distance. So we're going to make it smaller. That way it looks like it's far away without us saying it's actually far away. And for that, so instead of painting with your brush like that, we're going to turn it sideways and use that thin edge of it. And we're going to do a bit closer. So this is going to be the left side of our canvas. We're going to go in, not quite on the middle of it, and right about where the red and the orange is, I'm going to start to draw a little line going down into the grass. Just, if you have to, just kind of dab it on there if that makes it easier to draw the line. Just use that very thin edge of your brush. Kind of dab that line on there. Doesn't have to be perfect. This one has lots and lots of tiny little arms. Let's start with the tall one. We're gonna go, the edge of our cactus is there, so we're gonna go a little bit lower. We're gonna use that same dabbing motion with the thin edge of our brush. We're gonna go down and kind of curve it towards that main piece of our cactus. And then go, my camera's shaking. Get more black paint if you need to. You don't want your brush too dry, otherwise your lines won't be solid. You have to dab some paint off. You don't want too much on there either. And just use like the little tiny corner and dab black paint and make the little arms of the cactus. And just add little branches. It doesn't have to be the same. It'll be different for everyone. So just add enough arms. And we'll let those dry a little bit. We're gonna clean off our little brush and get all that paint off there. Once you got most of your paint off your brush, go ahead and dry it off with a paper towel or a napkin. Make sure it's nice and dry. And we're gonna get that white paint I'm gonna put it on just the itty bitty corner. So we just want a little bit of white paint. Now we're gonna add the stars. If you want, you can try to make the little constellation. I'm just gonna put mine at random. We're just gonna barely touch the canvas and make little dots. And I'm just gonna put them to just about where the white line is. Not gonna put them in the yellow paint, just in the shades of blue. One, your palette, wipe off a bit of the white paint. That way there's less of it on your brush. That way you can make smaller stars. Just putting them on there with a very light touch. You don't need to press down too hard. Just want little tiny dots.